What's the worst physical pain you ever felt? A lot of women/girls will understand this one, but period cramps. I'm not usually one to get horrific period cramps, they're usually bad but not unbearable. Well, I was at school one time and I was sitting in my class in excruciating pain, sitting in my lesson in tears where I had to go to the matron, school nurse, and she gave me some water and a sick bowl. After about 45 minutes she sent me back to class, but I was in so much pain I had no choice but to beg to go home. She didn't let me. I went to my next class and again, burst into floods of tears since it was just so unbearable when my teacher advised me to visit the matron again, still not being allowed home. In the end I went to my head of year where she called the matron telling her I was to be sent home since I've never been like this in my 5 years of being at that school, meaning it was so strange for me to be in such amount of tears that she was quite concerned for me. I've never been in such pain in my life, and I would never wish the way I felt that day on anyone. I had a heart attack and subsequent cardiac arrest in hospital in 2021. The Lucas machine managed to revive me after 8 minutes of CPR. About 10 days later, in bed, the missus put her arm across my chest, just happy to have me home. I was lying on my back and she was pressing on the ribs the CPR had broken. It felt like I had a building on my chest. I was in agony. I'm sweating even now just thinking about it. But I couldn't ask her to move. I was just glad to be alive, and a week earlier I know she'd have given anything to have me back. I suffered that arm for a million years. That was the worst physical pain I've ever experienced, but I was glad I was alive to endure it. I contracted spinal meningitis in my late 20s, an infection in the brain. The hospital had me in a negative pressure isolation chamber for 2 months, and during that time I had full control over a button that would directly inject morphine into my foreline because the pain was so incredibly severe. Even after being discharged from the hospital, the pain went on for about a year. I could not sleep lying down because that made the pain worse, so I had to lean against the headboard where I would simply moan the entire night. Basically, it was like having my head in vice for about 12 months. Ironically, one of the few moments of respite I had from this pain was during the 3 times that they did a spinal tap on me, which is when they inject a needle about 8 inches long directly into the spinal column in order to extract cerebral spinal fluid. Most people consider a spinal tap to be an excruciating experience, but for me it was actually a relief because it relieved some of the incredible pressure on my brain. The doctors thought that was pretty crazy that I enjoyed the spinal tap. Aside from the agonizing year of pain, I also had to relearn to walk and also relearn to speak. Amazingly, I made a full recovery, which was not expected. I had a fistula fixed, but it kept coming back. Finally, the doctor just decided to remove all the infected tissue. It looked like he attacked my asshole with an electric melon baller. Well, not exactly the asshole, just really close next to it. He left the wound open to heal from the inside and went on vacation. The instructions were to drink as much laxative as it took to get things moving. The normal dose on the first day didn't do it, neither did the double on the second day. The third day was another double and worked. Now the thing is, I couldn't sit on a toilet in that condition, so I had to learn how to be comfortable enough to shit standing in the shower. The laxative also helped with this. The routine was this: feel the BM coming, get to the shower, hold on to the walls while screaming in pain, wash and waffle stomp as fast as possible, fill the tub with the hottest water I could stand, sit and soak while waiting for the pain. You see, raw wound and waste don't mix, plus the entire ass area is entirely sensitive. Try to breath, try to mentally toughen enough to endure, but every time I would eventually break from the pain and sob uncontrollably. Get out, towel off, and start the mental prep for doing it again tomorrow. Thankfully, it did have the effect of curing the fistula. But I have some serious PTSD anytime I get even the smallest little tinkle in my ass. My wife found me in the tub one of those times and took me to the ER. The tech saw me in line and pulled me immediately into a room as I was white-knuckling the wheelchair and sweating through the pain. The Lotta became my hero that day, but they sent me home an hour later with the advice to just keep doing what I was doing. That pain taught me what the worst pain I can imagine actually is. Retained placenta, worse than kidney stones. Within a few minutes after giving birth, doctor tugged on cord to get the afterbirth to hurry and come out, despite me having a birth plan specifically requesting not to do so. Cord snapped, which causes major bleeding. Now they had to get the placenta out ASAP so I wouldn't bleed to death, but placenta hadn't been ready to come out yet. Can take up to 45 minutes, which is why I'd asked not to pull on cord. The doctor started reaching inside me and using her hand to remove the placenta. Worse pain than labor. Worse than kidney stones, had 'em? Seemed to last forever. I tried to crawl backwards off the hospital bed screaming, and they had to tell me stay put or die. Finally, another doctor came in with smaller hands and more experience and got it out. Lost a lot of blood. Could have died. Didn't get to bond with baby for a while as I recovered. Was traumatic like being raped because this was all against my wishes. I've had a few recently that all have been on my list of maybe top 3 worst pain of my life. If I had to choose the worst, it was probably a few weeks ago when I lost a corner of my tooth and had to go to the dentist. The tooth was not in any pain then, but the doctor told me he would have to add a crown, no root canal. So he grinded down the tooth and put the temporary crown on. He quoted me 3 weeks for the permanent crown, which kinda sucked, but whatever. They scheduled a cleaning for a few days after I got the temp crown. I have no idea why. My temp crown was such a bad fit and it gave me the worst toothache I have ever felt. It was loose and a 10/10 sensitivity. I couldn't even drink room temp water without my spine feeling like it was slipping out of my back. Jumped to the cleaning. I made the lady aware that my tooth was not only very sensitive but the temp crown was very loose. She seemed to ignore me as she starts prodding. She is going tooth by tooth with her pick and finally gets to the temp crown. In one swoop, she rips the temporary crown out of my mouth with her pick, and in the very same motion she brought up the water sprayer and shot the cold pressurized water directly onto the bare tooth stump. I grabbed her arm as tightly as I could. I probably scared the ever-living fuck out of her with how loud I screamed and jumped out of the chair. I have never passed out in my life, but this was probably the closest I had ever been. The ice-cold sensation on the bare nerves of what was left of that tooth are enough to scar me. I probably won't ever go in for a cleaning if I can help it. That was by far the worst pain I have ever experienced. Cluster headache or cluster migraine? There is nothing like it. It's considered one of, if not the most painful thing a person can have. People have committed suicide out of desperation. My neurologist told me the only condition that holds a candle to cluster headaches may be a condition called trigeminal neuralgia, which he also treats. I have so many different medications I take for these headaches. For prevention, I am on Aimovig and low-dose marijuana edibles. Smoking it doesn't help at all, but eating it does. I also have Reglan, cause you puke your guts up while it happens, Tramadol, Nurtec, Verapamil and more. It fucking sucks. They were talking about giving me an oxygen tank for when it happens, but I haven't accepted. I usually just puke in a dark bedroom, into a diaper trash can that's smell-proof, with the air conditioning cranked when it happens. Fortunately, it hasn't happened lately. You come out of it confused and lethargic, and sometimes it takes a whole day of being foggy-headed to come back to yourself. It's called postdrome. I do also have migraines. Sometimes I get a mixed headache where both happen at the same time.